Washington expected Canada to fold under pressure. Instead, Ottawa built partnerships with Europe and Asia. The tariff strategy has completely backfired.
Behind tomorrow's ceremony, $27 billion hangs in the balance. While the world watches diplomacy, Canada is quietly winning a trade war.
Breaking tonight, two leaders will smile for cameras at a World Cup ceremony. Behind that handshake, $27.7 billion hangs in the balance. Trump and Carney, December 5th, Kennedy Center. FIFA officials, trophy presentations, photo opportunities, and beneath every diplomatic smile, a trade war neither can afford to lose. Because while the world watches football draw ceremonies, Canada and America are drawing battle lines that will reshape North American commerce for a generation. Tensions are escalating tonight. Mark Carney announced his third Washington trip since April's election. The stated reason? FIFA. World Cup planning. The actual reason? A trade conflict that's been frozen since one 30-second advertisement destroyed months of negotiation. And what Trump doesn't know yet is that Carney's already winning. Everyone believed Canada would capitulate under tariff pressure. Wall Street expected Ottawa to accept Washington's terms by autumn. Analysts assumed Carney would prioritize quick deals over strategic positioning. They were all utterly incorrect. Ottawa, November 27th, 2025. Standing before reporters in the Capitol, Prime Minister Carney made a statement that caught Washington off guard. I'll see the president around the FIFA events, but I don't want to over-signal things. They haven't re-engaged yet. Translation: Canada isn't chasing deals anymore. America can call when they're ready to negotiate seriously. And what happened in the 24 hours before that press conference? Carney spoke to Trump. The conversation, according to Canada's Prime Minister, wasn't newsworthy. But here's what makes that phone call the most significant diplomatic move of November. Carney controlled the narrative, controlled the timing, and controlled what got reported. Trump called. Carney answered. And then Carney told the world it didn't matter. Dear viewers, between February and November 2025, something extraordinary happened in North American trade relationships. Trump pushed tariffs. Carney said no. And Canada, patient, strategic Canada, became the economy every global partner started calling first while American isolation deepened. Let's go back to where this started because the timeline reveals everything. February 2025, Trump administration imposes sweeping tariffs on Canadian goods. Steel, aluminum, copper, automobiles, lumber. The stated goal was protecting American industry. The actual effect was triggering the exact diversification strategy Washington feared most, because every tariff Trump announced made Canada's pitch to Europe and Asia more compelling. Partner with us, not with the chaos. March through September, Carney's team worked the channels. Quiet conversations with European ministers, trade missions to Asian capitals, investment agreements with countries that suddenly saw opportunity in America's retreat. And by October, something remarkable emerged in the data. Canadian exports to non-US markets hit record levels. Supply chains that took decades to build with America were being replicated with Germany, Japan, South Korea, and India in months. But here's where it gets interesting. Throughout that period, both sides maintained public optimism about reaching a deal. Carney's government expressed hope for steel and aluminum agreements before the APEC summit. American officials suggested breakthrough conversations were happening behind closed doors. The financial press wrote dozens of articles predicting imminent resolution. And then, Ontario released an advertisement. 30 seconds. Former President Ronald Reagan. A direct criticism of Trump's tariff policy using Republican values against a Republican president. The ad aired in October. By November, every negotiation channel went silent. U.S. Ambassador Pete Hoekstra, the man who'd spent months expressing cautious optimism, made a statement that revealed Washington's frustration. A deal wouldn't happen before the new year. Think about what that means. One advertisement, carefully crafted to use Trump's own party's legacy against him, shut down months of diplomatic progress. Not because the ad changed trade fundamentals, but because it wounded something Trump values more than steel tariffs, his image. And Carney? He watched the freeze happen and adjusted his strategy immediately. If Washington wanted to pause negotiations over an advertisement, Ottawa would use that pause to strengthen every alternative partnership. Swedish deals accelerated. Japanese investments expanded. South Korean technology agreements moved forward. By the time Hoekstra announced no deal before January, Canada had already built the diversification framework Trump's tariffs were supposed to prevent. Now we arrive at December 5th, the FIFA World Cup draw ceremony. Kennedy Center, Washington, D.C., President Trump, Prime Minister Carney, FIFA President, all on the same stage, co-hosts for the 2026 tournament, presenting unity to the world while their trade teams can't agree on basic steel quotas. You want to understand power dynamics? Watch what happens when two leaders who are actively conducting economic warfare have to smile together for cameras. Because that ceremony isn't just about football, it's a test of who can control the narrative better. Trump needs the optics of international cooperation, while his America First agenda creates isolation. Carney needs to demonstrate that Canada can stand as an equal partner, not a subordinate, in North American relationships. And here's the detail everyone's missing. Carney framed this trip perfectly. When reporters asked about re-engaging trade talks, his answer was masterful. Canada stands ready to re-engage when the Americans are. Notice the construction, not if, when. Not Canada seeking negotiations. America deciding when they're ready. The power dynamic just flipped in one sentence, but there's a deeper layer here that reveals Carney's actual strategy. This is his third Washington visit since April. 3 trips in 8 months during an active trade war. That's not desperation. That's pattern establishment. Each visit sends the same message to American business leaders, European observers, and Asian partners. Canada will maintain diplomatic presence and professional relationships regardless of Trump's tariff tantrums. Visit 1 April. Establish that Canada won't be intimidated by new leadership. Visit 2 Summer months. Demonstrate consistent engagement despite escalating tariffs. Visit 3 December. Show the world that Canada can stand on the same stage as America during a trade war and smile just as confidently. Think about what Trump sees every time Carney comes to Washington. A prime minister who isn't begging for deals. A leader who treats trade conflicts as temporary disagreements between long-term partners. A politician who can say, "Who cares when I last spoke to Trump?" without losing credibility because he's already built the alternative relationships that reduce America's leverage. And that "who cares" moment, that was calculated. When a reporter at the G20 summit in South Africa asked about prior conversations with Trump, Carney dismissed it as a detail. Most analysts missed the significance. But pay attention to where that exchange happened. G20, South Africa. Surrounded by leaders from emerging economies, Carney essentially told the developing world that conversations with Trump are details, not priorities. The real relationships, the strategic partnerships, those are happening elsewhere. Now let's talk about what happens at the Kennedy Center. 2 scenarios, both revealing. Scenario 1. Trump and Carney meet privately around the FIFA events. If that happens, watch what gets announced afterward. Will it be substantive trade progress? Probably not, because both sides need congressional approval and business sector buy-in for major changes. More likely, it'll be carefully worded statements about productive conversations and continuing dialogue, which means both leaders get to claim engagement without committing to anything concrete. Scenario 2. They only interact during official FIFA ceremonies. Cameras capture handshakes and smiles, but no private meetings occur. That would send an even stronger message, particularly from Carney. It would demonstrate that Canada can attend major events in Washington, participate in continental partnerships like World Cup hosting, and still maintain distance on trade until America offers serious terms. Either way, Canada wins the optics. Because the entire setup reinforces Ottawa's position, we're partners when America wants partnership. We're independent when America wants domination. Here's what keeps Trump's team up at night. Every day this trade war continues, every month without a deal, Canada locks in one more alternative partnership that won't disappear even if tariffs end. That Swedish deal Carney signed, that's not temporary. Those Japanese investments, they're building long-term supply chains. The South Korean technology agreements, they're creating institutional relationships that will outlast any single trade dispute. Trump imposed tariffs to bring Canada back into America's economic orbit. Instead, he's financing Canada's exit from U.S. dependency, and by the time Trump's team realizes this, Carney will have built a trading network so diversified that American tariffs become irrelevant to Canadian growth. Ambassador Hoekstra's statement about no deal before the new year, that wasn't defeatism. That was Washington admitting they don't have leverage anymore, because if the U.S. had real pressure points, they'd use them to force quick resolution. Instead, they're accepting a timeline that gives Canada 3 more months to deepen every alternative relationship. 3 more months for European firms to increase Canadian imports. 3 more months for Asian partners to build supply chain alternatives. 3 more months where America looks isolated while Canada looks strategic. And Our fifth crystallizes all of this. Two leaders on stage, one desperate to project strength while his tariff strategy fails to change behavior. One comfortable enough to call prior Trump conversations not newsworthy because he's already secured the partnerships that matter. You think Trump doesn't understand what's happening? He sees the same trade data everyone sees. He knows Canadian exports to Europe and Asia are surging. He watches as American businesses complain about tariff costs without seeing the strategic capitulation from Ottawa he expected. But Trump's trapped by his own rhetoric. America First doesn't allow for admitting that tariffs aren't working. So instead, his administration lets ambassadors announce delays, lets ceremonies proceed without breakthroughs, and hopes something changes before the economic data makes his failure undeniable. Meanwhile, Carney plays the long game. FIFA ceremony today, trade advantage tomorrow. Because every handshake that happens without a deal is another diplomatic victory for Canada. Every photo of Trump and Carney smiling together during a trade war reinforces Ottawa's message to the world. We can maintain partnerships even with difficult neighbors. This isn't just about December 5th. This is about Canada demonstrating that middle powers can withstand economic coercion from superpowers if they're strategic enough. This is about the fundamental collapse of tariff leverage when the targeted country has alternatives and the patience to pursue them. The ceremony will happen. Cameras will capture smiles. FIFA will draw World Cup groups. And behind every diplomatic photo, billions in trade remain disputed. But here's what the photos won't show. Trump needed this deal months ago. Carney doesn't need it at all anymore. That's the real story of December 5th. One leader attending out of obligation, another attending from a position of strength. The World Cup ceremony is just the stage. The actual competition is playing out in trade data, diplomatic cables, and the slow, steady sound of Canada building an economy that doesn't need American approval to thrive. And if you've watched this channel, you understand something most analysts still don't. This isn't one story. This is the pattern repeating across every sector. Swedish partnerships that happened because Trump pushed tariffs. Japanese investments that materialized because Carney refused to capitulate. South Korean technology agreements that emerged because Canada demonstrated you can withstand American pressure if you're strategic enough. Canada Next has been tracking this transformation since February. While mainstream media reported Trump's tariff announcements as leverage, we analyzed Canada's diversification response. While financial press predicted Ottawa would fold under pressure, we documented the alternative partnerships being built. While political commentators assumed America held all the cards, we showed you the data proving Canada was building an entirely different deck. December 5th isn't an ending. It's confirmation of everything we've been reporting. Carney's strategy works. Patience defeats pressure. Diversification destroys dependence. This is Canada Next. We don't just report Canadian news. We reveal the strategic reality behind every headline, the economic shift beneath every diplomatic smile, and the long-term transformation that mainstream coverage misses because they're focused on daily drama instead of generational change. The World Cup ceremony happens in 8 days. The trade war continues indefinitely. And Canada keeps building the economy that makes American tariffs irrelevant. That's the story. That's the strategy. That's Canada Next. Look, everything I've shown you tonight comes from public data and official reporting. But the conclusions, those are mine. You decide what it means.